I was sitting in the preparation room adjusting my tie in front of the mirror. The venue was perfect. The guests were arriving, and in just 30 minutes I would be marrying the woman of my dreams. Then my phone buzzed. A text message from Jessica. "I can't do this. I reject you." My heart stopped. The world around me blurred. Everything we had built together for 3 years collapsed in 8 simple words. I stared at my phone, unable to process what was happening. Then I took a deep breath and made a decision that would change everything. Before I tell you what happened next, let me know where you're watching from. Hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever had to make a split-second decision that changed everything. Trust me, what happened next will show you the power of turning rejection into redemption. 3 years ago, I met Jessica at a summer concert in downtown Chicago. I was there with some friends from work, not looking for anything serious. She bumped into me while dancing, spilled her drink on my new shirt, and somehow that turned into the best conversation I had had in years. We clicked instantly, both of us laughing about the ruined shirt that she insisted on paying to replace. The next day, she surprised me by actually sending money for the shirt through Venmo, with a note asking if I would use it to buy a new one we could go shopping for together. That was Jessica, thoughtful and surprising in the best ways. Our relationship progressed quickly but naturally. 6 months in, we were taking weekend trips to nearby states. By our 1-year anniversary, we had started talking about our future together. Life with Jessica was full of adventure and romance. She would leave little notes in my lunch bag when I had a tough day at work coming up. I would surprise her with tickets to shows she mentioned wanting to see months earlier. We balanced each other perfectly, or so I thought. She was spontaneous and creative. I was structured and practical. Together we seemed unstoppable. I proposed on our 2nd anniversary at the restaurant, where we had our first real date. I had arranged with the staff to bring out a special dessert with the ring hidden inside. When she found it, her eyes filled with tears, and she said yes before I even finished asking the question. Everyone in the restaurant applauded. It felt like a movie moment, one of those perfect memories you know you'll treasure forever. After the engagement, we dove into planning our future. We started looking at houses in the suburbs, discussing how many children we wanted. She wanted 2. I was hoping for 3, and even picked out names for the golden retriever we planned to adopt once we were settled. Our shared dreams felt so real, so attainable. The wedding planning consumed the next 6 months of our lives. We visited 15 venues before finding the perfect garden location. Jessica spent weeks choosing between slightly different shades of blue for the bridesmaids' dresses. I got involved too, tasting cakes, selecting the music, and working overtime to add extra funds to our wedding budget. Between the venue catering, flowers, photography, and honeymoon, we had invested over $30,000, not to mention countless hours and emotional energy. Looking back now, I can see the warning signs that started appearing about 2 months before the wedding. Jessica became increasingly distant. Our evening conversations that used to stretch late into the night became brief exchanges about wedding details. When I tried to talk about our future beyond the wedding, she would quickly change the subject. She started keeping her phone face down and would take calls in another room, something she had never done before. Several times I noticed her quickly switching apps when I walked into the room. When I asked about it, she laughed it off, saying I was being paranoid and that wedding stress was getting to me. There were other red flags too. Jessica began asking detailed questions about our joint savings account, which we had established for house down payment funds. She wanted to know exactly how much was in there and if she could access it without my signature. At the time, I thought she was just being thorough about our financial planning. She started canceling our regular Sunday dinners, with my parents claiming she was too busy with wedding preparations. This was unusual, because she had always enjoyed those dinners and had a great relationship with my family. My mother noticed the change and gently asked if everything was okay between us. I defended Jessica, insisting she was just overwhelmed with planning. 3 weeks before the wedding, Jessica suggested we should each write our own vows rather than using traditional ones as we had previously agreed. I spent days crafting mine, pouring my heart, into promises I intended to keep for a lifetime. When I asked about hers, she said she wanted them to be a surprise on the day. I thought it was romantic. The night before our wedding, we stayed in separate hotels, following the tradition of not seeing each other until the ceremony. We had a brief video call where she seemed nervous but excited. She told me she loved me and couldn't wait to start our life together. I went to sleep that night, happier than I had ever been, completely unaware of what was coming. The morning of our wedding day was busy with preparations. My best friend and best man Jake was with me, along with 2 other groomsmen. We had breakfast delivered to the room, got dressed in our tuxedos, and shared a toast to new beginnings. I tried texting Jessica a few times to wish her good morning, but received no response. Jake assured me she was probably busy getting her hair and makeup done with her bridesmaids. As the ceremony time approached, I became increasingly anxious about not hearing from Jessica. I called her maid of honor, Amanda, who sounded strange on the phone, and said Jessica was just running behind schedule, but would be ready in time. Something in her voice didn't sound right, but I pushed my concerns aside. Then, just 30 minutes before I was supposed to walk out to take my place at the altar, my phone buzzed with that text message that would change everything. I can't do this. I reject you. I read the message 3 times, hoping the words would somehow rearrange themselves into something less devastating. My hands shook as I tried calling Jessica. No answer. I called again, straight to voicemail. I sent a flurry of texts, asking what was happening, if she was okay, if we could talk. Nothing. Jake found me sitting on the floor, still staring at my phone in disbelief. When I showed him the message, his face went from confusion to anger to concern in seconds. He sat beside me, hand on my shoulder, not knowing what to say any more than I did. Maybe she just got cold feet, Jake suggested. Should we delay the ceremony? I can go out and tell everyone there's been a small issue. I couldn't think clearly. My mind was cycling through possibilities. Was she in trouble? Had something happened? Was this really happening? How could she just walk away after everything we had shared? I should go find her, I said, already standing up. Maybe she's just panicking. Maybe if we talk. Jake gently pushed me back down. Alex, wait. Think this through. If she's having doubts, chasing after her right now might not help. Let's try to figure out what's going on first. While Jake was trying to calm me down, his phone pinged. It was a message from Scott, one of our mutual friends who was supposed to be at the venue already. Jake's expression darkened as he read it. Scott says, Jessica's car is gone from the hotel. Her bridesmaids are still there, but they seem confused about what's happening. The pain in my chest intensified. This wasn't just cold feet or a momentary panic. Jessica had actually left. As the reality started to sink in, my phone buzzed again. This time it was a message from Kimberly, Jessica's cousin, but it wasn't meant for me. Wrong number, Kim. I typed back mechanically. Her response came immediately. Oh my God, Alex, I'm so sorry. That was meant for Amanda. But it was too late. I had already seen enough of her original message to understand what had happened. Kim had been telling Amanda that Jessica and Tom, her ex-boyfriend from college, had successfully made their escape and were on their way to the airport. Tom. The name hit me like a physical blow. Jessica had dated him for 2 years before we met. She had told me they broke up amicably when he moved to California for work. They occasionally liked each other's social media posts, but Jessica insisted they were nothing more than distant friends. I had never worried about him or seen him as a threat. While I was processing this betrayal, Jake was doing some investigating of his own. He pulled up Instagram and showed me a photo posted just 20 minutes earlier by a mutual acquaintance who worked at O'Hare Airport. In the background of a selfie, barely noticeable but unmistakable, were Jessica and a tall man with his arm around her shoulders, heading toward the international terminal. I need to check something, I said, pulling out my phone again. I opened our banking app, and my stomach dropped. Yesterday, nearly $20,000 had been withdrawn from our joint savings account, the money we had been saving for our house down payment, money that represented countless overtime hours and sacrificed vacations. money that represented our future. With shaking hands, I called our travel agent to confirm my growing suspicion. After identifying myself, I asked about our honeymoon arrangements, supposedly a surprise Jessica had planned. "I'm sorry, Mr. Reynolds, but Miss Stevens canceled all reservations 2 days ago," the agent told me. "She said you both decided to postpone the trip. We've already processed the refund to her credit card as requested." The pieces were falling into place, creating a picture so painful I could barely breathe. Jessica hadn't made a spontaneous decision that morning. This had been planned possibly for weeks. She had systematically prepared her escape, taking our money, canceling our honeymoon, without telling me, and reuniting with her ex-boyfriend, all while letting me continue with wedding preparations, writing my vows, and dreaming of our future together. The shock was giving way to a deep, searing pain, unlike anything I had ever experienced. I felt physically ill, my vision blurring with tears I refused to let fall. Jake called my parents, who rushed to the preparation room. My father, seeing my state, dismissed everyone else and sat across from me. "Son," he said quietly, "this is about as bad as it gets. But right now, you have a choice to make." My father had been through something similar decades ago before he met my mother. His fiancée had cheated on him with his best friend just weeks before their wedding. He rarely spoke about it, but I knew it had been a defining moment in his life. "You can let this pain define you," he continued, "or you can define how you respond to the pain. That second path is much harder, but it's the one that lets you keep your dignity." His words cut through the fog in my mind. I looked around the room at the tuxedo I had spent too much money on the boutonniere. Jessica had selected the gift I had planned to surprise her with during our reception. 200 guests were waiting in the garden. The string quartet was probably already playing the prelude music we had chosen together. In that moment, something shifted inside me. The pain was still there, as intense as before, but now there was something else too. A determination not to be broken by this betrayal. A resolution to face this nightmare on my terms, not hers. "I'm not running away," I told my father. "And I'm not hiding in shame as if I did something wrong." I stood up, straightened my tie, and looked in the mirror. "The guests are here. The venue is paid for. The food is prepared. The only thing missing is a bride who didn't deserve to be there anyway." My father's expression shifted from concern to a cautious pride. "What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking we don't cancel anything," I said, my voice growing stronger. "I'm thinking we turn this wedding into something else entirely." With a newfound determination, I walked toward the ceremony space, where Pastor Richardson, our officiant, was waiting with growing concern. The guests were seated, the music was playing, but there was no bride in sight, and we were already 15 minutes past the scheduled start time. "Alexander, is everything all right?" he asked when he saw my face. "Pastor Richardson," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. "There's been a slight change of plans." I explained the situation briefly, watching his expression shift from shock to sympathy. Then I told him my idea, expecting resistance. Instead, he nodded slowly. "It's unorthodox, certainly. But under the circumstances, I think your approach shows remarkable character. Are you sure this is what you want to do?" I wasn't sure of anything anymore, except that I couldn't bear the thought of slinking away in humiliation, while 200 people wondered what had happened. I couldn't stand the idea of Jessica's betrayal becoming a whispered story that painted me as the abandoned victim. "I'm sure," I told him. "I need to do this my way." The pastor nodded and squeezed my shoulder supportively. "Then I'll follow your lead." I took a moment to gather my thoughts, mentally preparing what I would say. Jake stood beside me, a solid presence, offering silent support. My parents had already taken their seats in the front row, my mother dabbing at tears while my father sat straight-backed and resolute. The string quartet finished their piece and looked expectantly toward the wedding coordinator, who was frantically trying to figure out what was happening. I nodded at her, then at the quartet. They began playing the processional music we had selected, the music that was supposed to accompany Jessica's walk down the aisle. Instead, I walked alone to the altar, feeling hundreds of curious eyes on me. Confused murmurs spread through the gathering as guests noticed the absence of bridesmaids, groomsmen, and most importantly, a bride. I reached the front and turned to face the assembly, taking a deep breath before speaking. "Thank you all for coming today." I began, my voice carrying across the garden. "I know you were expecting to witness a wedding between Jessica and me. I was expecting that too." The murmurs quieted as everyone leaned in to hear what I was saying. 30 minutes ago, Jessica sent me a text message saying she couldn't go through with the wedding. I've since learned that she left with someone else and has taken a substantial amount of our savings. Gasps and expressions of shock rippled through the crowd. I saw Jessica's parents in the third row, her father's face reddening with embarrassment, and her mother covering her mouth in horror. I could have canceled everything and sent you all home. But I realized something. We're all dressed up. We have a beautiful venue, excellent food waiting, and I'm surrounded by people I care about. The only thing missing is someone who clearly didn't want to be here anyway. I paused, feeling a strange calm settle over me, despite the circumstances. So I'd like to propose something different. Instead of a wedding, let's make this a celebration of dodging a bullet. Let's turn a day that could have been marked by deception into one marked by honesty and new beginnings. The silence that followed was tense, uncertain. Then, from the back row, someone started clapping. Others joined in, the applause spreading, until the entire garden was filled with supportive cheers and applause. Jessica's parents approached me as people began moving toward the reception area. Her father looked devastated. "Alexander, I cannot begin to express how ashamed and sorry I am," he said, his voice breaking. "We had no idea she would do something like this." I believed him. Jessica's parents had always been kind to me, and they looked as blindsided as I felt. "It's not your fault," I assured them. "You're welcome to stay if you'd like, but I understand if you prefer to leave." They opted to stay, a gesture that touched me deeply. As we moved to the reception area, I found myself surrounded by supportive friends and family. My father clapped me on the back, pride evident in his eyes. "That took guts, son. Real guts." The reception that followed was unlike anything I could have imagined. The wedding coordinator, quickly adapting to the unusual situation, had the staff remove the traditional bride and groom decorations. The DJ, after a quick conversation with Jake, revised his playlist to exclude romantic slow songs and wedding traditions like the first dance. What emerged was something unexpected. People who might have been reserved at a traditional wedding opened up. A distant cousin shared his own story of a relationship that ended just before an engagement, and how it eventually led him to meet his true life partner. My former college roommate revealed how his divorce, painful as it was, freed him to pursue his passion for photography. The event transformed into a kind of impromptu support group, mixed with a genuine celebration. There was laughter, a few tears, and a sense of authentic connection that might never have happened at a conventional wedding reception. Halfway through the evening, my phone started buzzing with notifications. A guest had posted about the unusual reception on social media, and it was gaining attention rapidly. By the end of the night, a local news website had picked up the story, dubbing it "The Wedding That Wasn't But Should Have Been." Lisa Martin, a wedding guest who happened to be a journalist for a popular online magazine, asked if she could write a feature about what happened. "People need to hear stories about turning pain into something constructive," she explained. "Would you be comfortable with me sharing yours?" I agreed, though I asked her to withhold Jessica's last name. Despite everything, I didn't want to publicly humiliate her. The article Lisa eventually published focused instead on resilience and community support in the face of betrayal. The video someone took of my speech at the altar found its way online too, and by the next morning, it had been viewed over 1 million times. My phone was flooded with messages from strangers sharing their own stories of heartbreak and recovery, thanking me for showing that there was a way to face betrayal with dignity. A wedding coordinator from another state emailed to say she had shared my story with a client who had recently been left at the altar, and it had helped him find the strength to move forward. Someone else wrote that watching my video had given them the courage to leave a toxic relationship they had been afraid to end. I hadn't planned for any of this attention. I had simply been trying to salvage some dignity from a devastating situation. But somehow my private heartbreak had resonated with people, in a way I never could have anticipated. In the midst of my own pain, I had inadvertently become a symbol of resilience for others. Exactly 72 hours after Jessica's text message, I received an email from her. It was long and rambling, filled with apologies and explanations. According to her, she and Tom had planned to start a new life together in Mexico, using our savings. But once they arrived, Tom revealed his true colors. He took most of the money and disappeared, leaving Jessica stranded in a foreign country with limited funds and overwhelming regret. "I made the biggest mistake of my life," she wrote. "What we had was real, and I threw it away for a fantasy that fell apart immediately. Please give me another chance. I still love you. I always have." Her email was followed by dozens of text messages and voicemails, each more desperate than the last. She had somehow found her way back to the States and wanted to meet to explain in person, to beg for forgiveness if necessary. After days of these messages, I finally agreed to meet her at a coffee shop near my apartment. I wasn't seeking reconciliation, but I did want closure, and part of me needed to see her face when she explained why she had been willing to throw away our relationship so callously. Jessica looked terrible when she arrived, her eyes red from crying, her usually perfect appearance disheveled. She reached for my hands across the table, but I kept them firmly wrapped around my coffee cup. "Alex, you have to believe me," she began. "Tom manipulated me. He found me when I was stressed about the wedding and convinced me I was making a mistake. He said we could have the life we planned before he left for California. I was weak and scared of commitment, and I let him get into my head." I listened silently as she continued her explanation, detailing how Tom had planned everything, how he had pressured her to withdraw the money, how he had promised they would double it with an investment opportunity in Mexico, how he had abandoned her at their hotel after securing most of the cash. "I realized immediately that I had made a terrible mistake," she said, tears streaming down her face. "You're the only man I've ever truly loved. We can still fix this. We can postpone the wedding, go to counseling, rebuild what we had." When she finally ran out of words, I took a deep breath. The woman sitting across from me was a stranger. Not because she looked different, but because I now saw clearly what had always been there beneath the surface. A person willing to betray someone who loved her completely. A person who only returned when her better option fell through. "Jessica," I said calmly, "I want you to understand something. What you did was not a mistake. A mistake is forgetting an anniversary or saying something hurtful in an argument. What you did was a deliberate series of choices made over weeks or months. You lied to me, stole from me, and abandoned me in the most public and humiliating way possible." Her face crumpled, but I continued. "I'm not angry anymore. I'm not even hurt in the same way. Meeting you here today has actually given me something valuable: certainty. Certainty that ending our relationship was the right thing, even if it happened in the wrong way. But we can work through this," she pleaded. "People overcome worse things all the time." I shook my head. "Some betrayals change something fundamental. I could never trust you again, and without trust, we have nothing. I wish you well, Jessica, I really do. But we're done." I stood up, leaving my coffee, half finished, on the table. As I walked away, I felt a weight lifting that I hadn't even realized I was carrying. The conversation hadn't gone as Jessica had hoped, but it had given me something valuable, the final piece of closure I needed to truly move forward. The weeks that followed were challenging, but healing. I started seeing a therapist to process the betrayal and examine the relationship red flags I had missed. I decided to take the honeymoon trip anyway, but to a different destination and alone. 2 weeks hiking through national parks gave me time to reflect and reconnect with myself. I reconnected with old friends I had somewhat neglected during my relationship with Jessica. I picked up my guitar again, something I had loved in college, but gradually abandoned as adult responsibilities took over. I volunteered at a local animal shelter, finding unexpected comfort in the simple, uncomplicated affection of dogs who needed care. At work, I threw myself into a project I had been putting off, developing a new client management system that earned me recognition from senior management. The focus and achievement helped rebuild my confidence, reminding me that my worth wasn't tied to Jessica's assessment of me. The viral nature of my story led to unexpected connections. I received invitations to speak at small community events about resilience and dignity in difficult circumstances. I joined a support group for people who had experienced similar betrayals, finding strength in shared experiences and witnessing others heal. 6 months after the wedding that never was, I went on my first date. It was awkward and didn't lead to a second, but it was an important step. I was moving forward cautiously, paying more attention to character and compatibility rather than being swept away by initial attraction and romance. The money Jessica took was never recovered, but the financial loss taught me valuable lessons about protecting myself in future relationships. I consulted with a financial advisor to rebuild my savings and create more secure plans for the future. Throughout this journey, I came to understand that what happened wasn't a reflection of my worth, but of Jessica's character. The betrayal that once seemed like the worst possible outcome had actually saved me from a lifetime with someone capable of such deception. There are still difficult days, moments, when a song or a place triggers memories of what I thought we had. Times when the trust issues created by Jessica's betrayal surface in new relationships, but these moments have become less frequent and less powerful. If there's one thing I've learned from this experience, it's that we can't always control what happens to us, but we can control how we respond. Jessica's rejection could have been the worst day of my life, but instead, it became the day I discovered my own resilience. The day I learned that sometimes the most painful endings make way for better beginnings. I'm sharing this story because I know there are others out there going through similar pain. Remember that betrayal says more about the betrayer than the betrayed. Your worth isn't diminished by someone else's inability to recognize it. Sometimes rejection isn't the end of your story, it's the beginning of a better one. One where you're the hero, not the victim. Have you ever experienced a betrayal that ultimately led to something better in your life? Share your story in the comments below. If this resonated with you, please like this video and subscribe to the channel for more stories of overcoming life's challenges. Thank you for listening. And remember that even your darkest moments can become the foundation for your greatest strength.